Nicholas on Bent Ramp. And David Inglis even coming into this top 8 as our first seed, which I'm told gives you momentum, if that's even a real thing that exists.
Well, it at least gives him the play with that magical growth spiral 2 lands god hand, if you will.
And that's a hand which is a god hand if there are more lands lurking on top of your deck, and might just be spinning his tires fruitlessly otherwise. And we see Gabriel Nicholas going down to 6, putting back a second copy of Nissa Who Shakes the World. So pretty standard fare for these opening hands in these matchups.
Hard to throw this back in Inglis's position when you know you have 27 lands left in your 53 card deck. You're 51% to draw a land every turn, right?
Yeah, 51% of the time it works every time.
You get it. Oh god, that 49%.
He's got another draw set, but he'll be fine. You know, you got to set up a sweat. That's how these tournaments work. We got to keep some suspense in it for the viewers. If you were rigging the shuffler, this is exactly how you would draw it up.
Oh yeah, you got to build the suspense. All right, let's see it, David Inglis. You got that third land on top?
All right, let's go.
Oh my.
Okay, well, we have
we're not dead.
No, although the fact that Inglis did not put in a land off that second, of that turn 2 growth spiral is a loud signal to Gabriel Nicholas, who can't really punish him for that, but this is the kind of spot that people talk about where, like, if you have a way to, let's say, mystical dispute their follow-up play, you snap it off and you hope that they just can't get anything done for the remainder of the game.
Right, any sense of weakness like that, you're going to want to try to capitalize on if you're in Nicholas's position.
And here, a possible target for Mystical Dispute, but I think it's more likely we're going to see that Shark Typhoon catch in for a card, just helping Inglis make those all-important land drops.
Yeah, just finding ways to actually get out on the battlefield is going to be so important. The front half of this Uro feels fairly incidental against a deck that leans so heavily on these big, powerful plays like Nissa Who Shakes the World.
But it looks like instead we're seeing Ether Gust targeting the Uro, and for Nicholas, I'm curious to see where this goes. He puts that back on top, I believe. So Inglis saying that just delaying that mana boost and potentially Nicholas drawing himself towards more high-impact cards is more important than increasing the probability of making his own land drops there.
Right. This is a situation where Inglis likely just feels that he can try and instead bridge the gap to that point.
And this now is the perfect window for Inglis to land the Teferi Time Raveler that he just drew. And yeah, he has to minus it, look for a card to hit a land drop, and misses once again.
Brick.
And now Nicholas gets to stick his own Teferi, which in the Teferi pseudo mirror in this matchup, Reclamation is hurt by that far more than Ban Ramp is.
Exactly. This Ban Ramp deck in a lot of ways feels like something akin to a tap out control strategy. So playing on your turn the whole time is just pretty close to business as usual. But I should say playing in your main phase is business as usual.
Yes. But the nice thing here is he does find that fourth land, and he sticks to Reclamation, which isn't going to have an impact immediately. But on the following turn, if he can petty theft back Gabriel Nicholas's Teferi, then all bets are up. You know, he gets to unlock the potential of that Wilderness Reclamation.
Yeah, just being able to get that Teferi off the battlefield would be such a big deal for Inglis. It would unlock so many cards in his hand.
So we'll see if he decides to commit to that. Alternatively, he could petty theft it now and then try to dispute it on the way back down, just ensuring that there's that nothing interferes with that.
Right, and one of the scary things at this point is you have to know Anissa is coming down next turn.
Right, and you know, if you go for this line, which delays your own development, and Gabriel just sticks to Nissa, he can run away with the game in short order.
Right, Nissa will pressure this Teferi.
Yeah, so here we go. Wilderness Reclamation comes down, and now Nissa, the marquee mana generation engine for Bant Ramp, can come down as well.
And here, chump blocking with a Shark Typhoon is just so underwhelming, but what else are you supposed to do?
Inglis might think that his own Teferi, like we said, Teferi hurts Reclamation far more than it hurts Bant. Maybe his own Teferi can die here, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fair point as well.
You're looking at Gabriel Nicholas's deck. He does have a copy of Dovin's Veto, which is, I imagine, can play a role in these longer games in which he desperately wants to draw. Outside of that, though, we got some Ether Gust, but we don't have main deck mystical disputes. We don't have more hard counter magic. So yeah, that Teferi has done its work in trying to get Inglis closer to that 4th land drop.
Yeah, that's a fair point as well. And we even see Teferi just rolling up here, signaling that Nicholas is not particularly worried about what Inglis can do next turn.
So this could be a big turn for Inglis, and he does find another land to really harness the power of it. And there's the explosion!
Oh,
wow!
Oh my god! All right,
he could not have drawn that up any better.
Oh, is he I think he's a mana short of bouncing the Teferi with Borrower and killing Nissa with Explosion. But the shark can attack Nissa.
Yeah, that's 2, and then he can deal the additional 4.
Oh my god.
So that's what we call a swing. You know, that this game is wild right now.
Oh my god, what an absolutely monumental top deck. That is exactly what David needed to find to get back in this game.
And with Anissa off the board, Gabriel isn't effectively doubling his mana, so even just recasting that Teferi is going to take up most of his turn.
Right, cast the Teferi, bounce the Wilderness Wreck, then just leaves you exposed to a shark. And then Teferi's dead almost.
Yeah, here we go. Fable Passage for that basic mountain.
All right, Auto Tapper, don't fail Tangrams now.
And there's only one copy of Brazen Borrower in the main deck, so Gabriel might be thinking his Teferi is likely to be safe, but it turns out Tangrams does have that Brazen Borrower, and he does have the explosion as of this turn, as of this draw step.
All right, step 1, attack with the shark. Nissa, 4.
And Inglis, being very deliberate over how he tapped his mana, does not want that mountain to be committed by the auto tapper.
Excuse me, Mr. Nicholas, could I please borrow your Teferi for just a moment?
And here we go. We're going to go to the end step. We're going to QQ. We're going to untap.
Wow. Inglis slowly tapping each individual land.
Now he might have the QQ coming out.
Oh, absolutely not. Love an auto
4.
pay.
There we go. So explosion for 4 takes down Nissa, draws Inglis back up to 7 cards, and there's a second reclamation and a second explosion.
Oh, and this is exactly what we were talking about going into this game. These are the games where the Reclamation deck can actually just go toe-to-toe with the Bant deck, or the games where you can pressure their Planeswalkers and commit to the battlefield.
And this is the other disgusting thing too, is if Nicholas tries to use Teferi to bounce Reclamation, then Teferi just dies to the shark. If he doesn't, then he spent 3 mana to just kind of not really do anything. So this is a really rough spot for Nicholas.
Is there another world where you can cast Teferi and bounce the shark token?
Yeah, I think so.
Because that just answers the Wilderness Reclamation as well.
Honestly, that might be the line. It does open you up to that hardcast Brazen Borrower, maybe an Uro, but honestly, I think that might be what you have to do now.
Right. I don't think combat's going to be a huge issue if you can make another untap step happen when you have this Teferi Master of Time and the Shark Typhoon hanging out in your hand.
Yeah, it might be that Inglis just has to use that explosion for much less than it could have been, just to kill Teferi, and then unlock the rest of his hand, draw some more cards. And, you know, if Inglis has 7 cards, 2 Reclamations, 2 Uros, and so on, versus a few cards from Nicholas, that's a fine trade, even if you effectively wasted an explosion.
Okay, so how do you feel about Shark Typhoon chump blocking a shark? Just making
I don't hate
a 1/1 shark to get in front of it, save your Teferi, keep this Wilderness Wreck at arm's length.
Yeah, I think if you're bouncing the Reclamation instead of the shark, this is the line you're setting up here. And yeah, here we go, hovering over that Shark Typhoon. There it is, a 1/1 shark, but even just keeping that 2/2 around, that can pose a serious threat in future turns, because now, that Shark Typhoon, it can't ambush the 2/2 shark, it can't ambush the Brazen Borrower, so Inglis might be tempted just to play a 3/1 flyer in his main phase and pass the turn, because he's not under too much pressure himself here.
Right, this is a situation where you frequently just really need to try and keep the Reclamation deck off the battlefield, because the name of the game is untapping with Planeswalkers, getting to just snowball an advantage with these cards that are worth more cards the more turns that they are on the battlefield.
Exactly, and yeah, we can cast an Uro now just to gain some life back, make another land drop, draw a card. All good stuff that the Reclamation deck actively wants to do. And I think we're going to see just 3-1 flyer for 3, a classic limited maneuver here.
Is
a
it
Richard
possible
airship,
to cast
if you will.
the Uro? If we crack a Fabled Passage?
Quite possibly. This is where we would love to be able to just mouse over the graveyard and take a look. But technology has not come that far. You know, we can put a man on the moon, but we can't look to see what's in Inglis's graveyard right now. And it looks like the answer is yes. The Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath escaping here. And yeah, when with Teferi now down on 1 counter, there's no immediate answer to that Uro. And that could run away with the game just by itself.
Right, an Uro is just a great card at being able to pressure Planeswalkers. It single-handedly can attack for Nissa's total loyalty after that single roll-up it'll have.
Nicholas weighing his options, goes for the Nissa. And this is such a scary situation for Nicholas. You're looking over, you know your opponent has at least 1 Reclamation and a bunch more goodies besides, and you're facing down an active Uro, Teferi, or a Shark that's threatening to kill your Teferi. It's a really tough spot all around.
I'm imagining that we might even just see this Teferi try to phase out this Uro in order to just buy time here.
Okay, Aether Gust is interesting. Although...
Not right now, it's not.
No, not going to be a factor on this turn. So yeah, Teferi can phase out the Shark, or it can phase out the Uro, but then the other one can just take care of the small Teferi, the better Teferi.
3 fairy, if you will.
Yes.
People always say if Teferi's so good, why no Teferi 2? We skipped right to 3 fairy.
It was so good we needed another sequel.
Exactly. Combat, get that Teferi dead.
This one, the most interesting of the trilogy, I would say. So, Teferi Time Raveler will bite the dust, and now 2 explosions, or 2 Reclamations, and a big explosion on the docket for David Inglis. And I think this is this exactly lethal?
Yeah, this feels like a situation where Inglis is actually just able to kill from here. That's 20 times 2 minus 4 is 16.
There it is.
Or 10 times 2 is 20 minus 4 is 16, excuse me.
And part of me does believe that if you're going to be casting a game-winning explosion for 16, you should have to manually tap your lands for it. At least put the work in.
Absolutely not. Under no circumstances.
Well, hey, it wouldn't be good for us. It wouldn't be good for the viewers. But for my own sense of justice and what's right, you know, we got to satisfy that somehow.
Right, and that was just such unbelievable navigation on the part of Inglis in that game. It really felt like he missed a land drop. Growth spirals didn't come together. Really just rallied back to, in some ways it felt like he stole that game.
And that's the key. You know, you're in a tough position, but you give yourself the outs that you need. And if you hit those, then you're off to the races. So as we move into sideboarding here, we see the king himself, Kenrith, coming into the deck for David Inglis. The Spectral Sailors that we mentioned, some of the blue interactive cards. Not all of the Aether Gust, some of those staying on the bench.
Yeah, that's a situation where there are only so many cards that it's actually effective against, you know, Nissa, Uro, or the real things you want to be hitting with it. You're not very excited to Aether Gust a Hydroid Krasis, for example.
And looking over at Nicholas's sideboarding, he has a lot of great tools himself, more than he can possibly bring in. So Dovin's Veto, which seems like an absolute ace in the matchup, he seems to be debating whether he actually wants that in these post-sideboard games where the creatures are playing a bigger role.
Anytime your opponent has something like Kenrith, like Nightpack Ambusher, you have to check yourself before bringing in too many copies of Dovin's Veto. You don't want these incredibly punishing creatures to just run away with a game. This sort of hedging is exactly what got Nicholas this far in the tournament, when so many of these Reclamation decks are able to attack from that angle.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see that thought process play out in real time, where we see Joriel kind of go in and out and then back into the deck, and just tweaking the numbers on some of the more situational cards that he has access to.
A lot of it is just going to be playing a sort of numbers game going into these second and third games here.
Oh, is Inglis going for a last-minute reshuffle too?
Ooh, we see a lot of those expansion explosions going to the sideboard, completely cutting Uro here.
Yeah, and Uro typically, I mean, it's a fantastic card. Arguably too good for several constructed formats. In this specific scenario, it's not the strongest card, but you're tapping out for something that doesn't really affect the board immediately, runs into cards like Mystical Dispute and Narset and so on and so forth. And we do see Narset, that crucial mirror breaker here for Gabriel Nicholas.
What this signifies to me is that Inglis is planning to lean completely into a flash strategy, and having these 3-mana sorts of tap-out cards that your opponent can answer fairly easily is just not where you want to be.
Yeah, even Teferi, which in theory completely backs up that strategy, we saw him debate whether he really wanted that final copy.
Exactly, it's just the kind of card that you do need to protect, but most of your plan involves not protecting things, not letting your opponent play to the battlefield, and so on.
And you see from Inglis here, the turn 1 shock for untapped Hallowed Fountain, bluffing the Dispute. No Dispute in hand. He did just draw it off the top, which is always unfortunate when that happens, and now you've kind of accidentally given your opponent the right information. But a heads-up maneuver just to stop Nicholas from kind of firing off that growth spiral on his own main phase necessarily.
Yeah, sometimes you just really want to be able to represent something like that.
Yeah, so with that in mind, it's hard for Nicholas to feel comfortable just jamming this Narset into open Mystical Dispute mana, right?
Exactly. This is a spot where Nicholas has to sort of just pick and choose what spells he's comfortable with getting countered, because as big and powerful and mana inefficient your spells are, some cards are going to get disputed. It's a matter of picking which ones it happens to.
So Nicholas tests the water with an Uro instead, and we see the loftiest of denials in Inglis's hand, which may be leaping onto the stack here.
Oh, yeah. Time to force spike that Titan.
There it is. So Lofty Denial swoops in, takes care of the front half of Uro for now. And yeah, once again, Inglis shocking a land representing hardcast Mystical Dispute in case of a non-blue thing that he needs to counter on this turn.
It's a good spot where you could counter something like a Joel Rail if that's what was going to come down, or just give you a 1/1 Shark from the Shark Typhoon to let you start attacking and applying pressure.
Oh, and there's Wilderness Reclamation. So Inglis has that option available to him. He can also go for Teferi, but then because he has Forest and Stomping Ground, he cannot hold up Mystical Dispute, and it wasn't necessarily effective even if he could, because Nicholas could pay for a dispute on his own dispute.
I'd be very surprised if we saw him go for it for exactly the reason you just outlined. You can't really protect your own spell from a dispute there with your dispute.
And Nicholas hits the 5th land of his own, unlocking Nissa and Elspeth from his hand, draws Joriel, which is a useful tactic in a few turns down the line, and he will go for this Narset.
I would imagine we're going to see a Mystical Dispute on this.
Oh,
you want to
100%.
kind of pave the way for this Teferi if you can. So making sure you can actually get value out of it is important.
And these dispute fights are interesting, where the card loses a lot of its potential as the game goes on, and sometimes you're using it just to foster your own spell, and then sometimes its only use really is to hit your opponent's spell because it's not going to be good at protecting your own. And here is Joriel, and I think we're about to see the other hardcast Mystical Dispute here for Inglis.
It's at least what the sacrifice of the passage would imply, but getting to just cast
Or
this
maybe
Wilderness Reclamation next turn with the shields down, we may see Inglis look for some more power cards and just cycle this Tri-land here.
Yeah, we may just be saving time cycling this Triome, looking for something to pair with our Reclamation. And yeah, sure enough, that's what we see. And I guess we find another Triome that we can cash in, so we have some redraws there.
So the question at this point is if you shock in a land, just get that extra mana, and then have 3 left after you cycle on your end step to hold up this hard cast Mystical Dispute.
And that's a crucial line potentially against either ECD or Nissa, both of which we see in Nicholas's hand. And those multiple shocks in on the early turns might be adding up here over time, where we've seen Joriel turn the corner in these games so quickly, and every life point matters against those sequences.
Right, this is a spot where, depending on how the game plays out, we might even see Nicholas just hold this Mystical Dispute indefinitely to grow everything with Joriel.
And that negate is a fantastic draw for David Inglis. Backing out the Mystical Dispute, allowing him to deal with both of the Premier threats in one turn here. Dispute can no longer force through either that Nissa or that Elspeth.
Yeah, that is an enormous pickup off the top for Inglis.
And we'll see what Nicholas decides to prioritize there. Easy to think that just getting the Reclamation off the board with the ECD is the focus, but I could see just wanting to get Nissa down here too.
I would almost lean towards Nissa because the Elspeth Conqueror's Death acts as its own Nissa, but Elspeth Conqueror's Death getting this Wilderness Reclamation off the battlefield is crucial.
It seems like the easiest way this game gets out of your hands is if the Reclamation allows Inglis to just go over the top of your Mystical Dispute. So, not surprised to see the Elspeth Conqueror's Death leading this fight, and a backbreaking negate plus Mystical Dispute here for David Inglis.
Well, now Inglis needs a way to capitalize because this Teferi is fine, but it's not very powerful, and Nicholas does have a Nissa and an Uro that can be escaped next turn.
Right, Inglis has a window, but he needs to use that window on something important, and he just doesn't have access to that right now.
Exactly.
So Teferi definitely bouncing something. I assume Joriel, but maybe dealing with the shark permanently is a bigger focus.
Right, just making sure that it's gone is worth so much more here.
Oh, and there's Brazen Burrow, which you almost wish it had been in the other world now, but that's a card that can deal, temporarily at least, with any threat that Nicholas puts out.
You've got to feel kind of okay about just finding any gas off the top at all, but now it's a question of if Inglis just wants to throw the shark in front of Jolrail or actually try and get some more value out of it by just applying pressure. Nicholas is at 12.
This would be a fantastic spot for Kenrith the Return King.
Oh, absolutely. Decisions.
So here's Nissa, and it looks like with Nicholas's mana situation, he may have to choose between playing Nissa and returning Uro on this turn.
Without having access to something like a breeding pool, it's just not really feasible for Nissa to generate quite enough mana for this Uro to come back.
And that's one downside of Nissa in the ban decks compared to the Sultai decks or some of the Temur shells, where you don't have the triumphs that can really supercharge Nissa, give you consistent access to all of those colors of mana.
Right, you're way more interested in having your mana enter the battlefield untapped in the Bant deck.
Absolutely. So Uro is back in play, and the Brazen Burrow can now take that down via Petty Theft. But that doesn't feel like a great exchange either. All you do is give Nicholas another cycling card that he can cash in and then return later on.
Oof, you can't feel good about it, but on the other hand, that Uro is just going to get to attack next turn anyway.
So this is it. If we can find a Kenrith or an Explosion, Spectral Sailor actually not too bad.
When you have a Wilderness Reclamation, that's a lot of cards.
Yeah, we take those. Okay, so that's a 7th land. So that's 14 in total. So Inglis can play the Sailor and draw up to 3 cards this turn.
I imagine we're going to see the first activation of Sorcery Speed, just in case we hit a better land to hit. But that's going to be worth 2-3 cards.
And there's Kenrith. Not on this turn, unfortunately. But if Inglis has a window to deploy that and make use of it, that could dominate this game.
Right, that card is threatening some very real damage here.
And which one are we leading on? I guess if you lead with Uro, you have more information, and then maybe could draw something else that's relevant. But then this gives you more mana with which to do that.
I think at this point, Nicholas is trying to think if they want to use it as a bait spell.
Okay, thinking if that Sailor had found a dispute or something similar.
Exactly. There's enough mana available on Inglis's side that maybe this is a spell that he's interested in countering.
Yeah, I guess negate or gust maybe more so.
Right.
And so yeah, we're going to attempt the Nissa. It's going to resolve. And one interaction that's worth noting here is Nissa with Joriel. If you activate your Joriel, those lands, you get to change the base power, and then the 3 counters do actually apply. We saw a kind of tricky situation earlier in the tournament with Nissa lands and Mutate, which does not work the way you want it to. But luckily, Jor-El and Nissa are the better friends there.
Oh, absolutely. They both stand for the forest, so it's unsurprising that works well for them.
And all of these going at Teferi, which I'm actually a little surprised by, because I think that just applying that pressure to Inglis's life total might be the best focus here. You put Inglis in a position quite quickly where he needs to chump block, and the only thing he has currently that can do that is Spectral Sailor.
I think we're just going to see this Teferi die here. It's not really doing that much more.
If Nicholas had a card like Gust or Negate, I would be a lot more into this, but I think as it is, you're kind of giving Inglis another turn or two to find maybe a game-winning Explosion or Kenrith, which I'm not going to call that a game-winning Kenrith, but it could easily turn out to be that.
I mean, do you know how much life that Kenrith is worth?
It's a lot of life.
So
it's a lot of
much.
counters. It's a lot of whatever the other modes are. A lot of haste and trample if you're into that. Not a lot of returning creatures from graveyards, unfortunately, but that's fine. We have more than enough options available to us here.
I mean, at the very least, that Kenrith is worth 15 points of life gained, as well as trample and haste next turn. Bare minimum.
And that +1/+1 counter mode of Kenrith, it's not the one that we saw too often in, let's say, like the Jeskai Fire decks where it used to pop up in the past, but that mode gets out of control very quickly if you have enough green mana, and Inglis certainly does here.
Right, you can just start pumping something like Brazen Borrow or a Spectral Sailor that we don't have. Nicholas doesn't have any real way to block or get in the way of, and it'll run away with the game. It's just building your own Shark Typhoon.
Absolutely, and it is nice too for Inglis that Nicholas only has that Growth Spell in hand at the moment, so the threat of a Jor-El activation is actually much lower than it would be normally.
Having the one card does take a lot of reach away from Nicholas here.
For sure. And I could almost see the Spectral Sailor maybe staying back just to hedge against that eventuality.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Once you actually have Kenrith on the battlefield, it has that same card draw effect that Spectral Sailor does, and the 1/1 is far more expendable at that point.
Now, having said that, giving haste and attacking with everything means that Nissa dies even through a 3/3 land chum block on the Kenrith.
Right, this is a spot where even a double block is not going to be good, since Kenrith can just put a counter on himself.
And here we go, everything coming at Nissa. And yeah, I think we're going to see a 6/6 Kenrith in short order here. So with that in mind,
put Nissa at a 1?
Yeah, so a major sacrifice there to keep the Nissa around.
Well, is it? It feels like all of those were kind of free. Nissa's going to make another counter next turn. It's not like Jor-El is short on cat friends.
Sure. So now 8 mana available to Inglis, which means at least 10 life and also another +1/+1 counter in the bargain.
Oh, at this point, it feels like this game's going to be a runaway if Nicholas doesn't find an answer for this Kenrith immediately.
I guess we can also spend 3 mana to draw cards instead of... we're paying 4 mana either way, right? So that works out fine, but so many different mana sinks available for Inglis here.
Yeah, just having his mana doubled as a result of this Wilderness Reclamation, this is a game that shows the power of this card. Even outside of huge spells like Expansion Explosion, just getting to activate something over and over and over and over has so much value.
Yeah, we saw Kenrith used so effectively with another broken mana engine in Phasma Invention, which proved too good, eventually got the axe. And lots of people were putting Wilderness Reclamation in that same conversation, and looking at this game, you can definitely see why.
Oh, absolutely.
So Uro, once again, coming back, didn't get the memo that it was uninvited. But
Stop me if you've seen this one before.
And get ready to see a lot of this for however many months Theros Beyond Death has left in Standard.
How great would it be if Uro got deleted Monday? Oh, Lord.
And Narset Powder Veils, under different circumstances, would be an excellent pickup there. As it stands, I'm not sure how useful that's going to be.
Yeah, just look at how many flyers Nicholas has on his side of the battlefield.
And we can get super aggressive with this Kenrith.
Absolutely, there's a point where you start dumping counters on your creatures.
Now, Inglis does have to be careful, because that Joriel, if Nicholas's hand grows too large, and we have 5 creatures there at the moment, maybe more if it's a 6 round, then he really does have to worry about the threat of that. And I'm sure he's running all the numbers in his head to calculate what's the best way to use my Kenrith, what's the best way to ensure myself against dying to a Joriel activation out of nowhere. So a lot on the line here, very tense situation, and these players have got this far by navigating spots like this successfully.
Right, this is a very tense situation where this Joriel and this Uro and this Nissa have just created so many bodies that it can go around Inglis's battlefield.
Yeah, and we find a way to spend 3 mana to draw a card after all without Ketria Triumph. But then he does allow Narset to resolve, so maybe signaling that the rest of his mana is going to be tied up with gaining life or piling counters onto one of those creatures.
That's what I would expect. Naturally, you can't draw cards anymore. There is a Narset in play. David Inglis, great player, not going to actually just jam a bunch of mana in there for no reason.
Dovin's Veto and Teferi Time Raveler, both excellent choices potentially for Gabriel Nicholas.
Yeah, this is a spot where both of those, or all of those cards do have the ability to have a major impact on this game. I feel like you're just priced into taking Teferi here, but I'm prepared to see Nicholas make a different decision.
The Teferi is kind of curiously weaker than it would be normally, because Kenrith allows you to give all of the creatures haste, so you bounce anything back. Inglis just replays it, gives it haste if he wants to. And then Bouncing Reclamation doesn't do as much here because his mana sink is Kenrith, which doesn't need to be cast as a spell during your own turn, during your end step. So Teferi still has some utility, but it's not the game-winning play that it might have been at various points.
Right, there is certainly a squeeze being placed on it here by the fact that what Inglis is doing here is just not instant speed spells.
So Inglis gains 5 life.
Wow, what a convenient final life total here.
Interesting.
And we see Nicholas holding this Fabled Passage. He's out of more basics to seek out with it. So instead of having it be graveyard fodder for this Uro, instead it's going to be fodder for Jolrail.
I was wondering if he was out of maybe an island to cast a Teferi, but if he's out of basics at all, then that Fabled Passage is a blank card, essentially.
Well, it is a card, though, which does have value with Jolrail's, let's say, ultimate?
It sure does. Yeah, you would take a piece of blank cardboard at this point. Yeah, both of these Planeswalkers getting assassinated, and so now we have 9 mana becomes 18 mana if we want to, or we can grow Spiral, which is effectively free and pays for itself here. And 18 mana is a lot to sink into your Kenrith.
Right, this is a spot that is exactly what David needs to be doing in this matchup, just pressuring Planeswalkers, getting to use all the mana from Wilderness Reclamation.
I wonder how...
Oh my god, wow. Look at this.
Oh my word, so that's...
Wilderness Reclamation number 2 coming down for David Inglis. This has just got to be a runaway with a Kenrith here.
Yeah, 20 more mana, and yeah, Inglis feels the freedom to just start drawing cards. He can gain so much life that he's going to be out of reach of whatever Nicholas can put together.
Respect for activating Spectral Sailor instead of Kenrith to save that couple of seconds off the clock.
Absolutely.
Oh, Nick off the top is going to be able to check that Time Raveler as well.
Yeah, now if Nicholas has, I guess, 2 Teferis, that solves that problem. But I'm curious if, before that second reclamation, if Inglis was banking on that Kenrith sticking around as a blocker, where, a Surprise Teferi, changing the math on that might have made all the difference.
Well, in this spot, Inglis can go up to 20.
Yeah. And there's a lot of material on Nicholas's side, but I don't think that's 20 powers worth.
Oh, no, absolutely not, especially without any more cards or mana available. We just see, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8... a measly 14 points of damage that can come into the red zone this turn.
And so this does force Inglis to commit his mana now to the Kenrith activations. So that's 6, 9, 10, 14. Yeah, Inglis can survive at 1, use the rest of his mana to load up some counters on those flyers, and then Uro puts Nicholas up to 19. But we're talking about lethal damage pretty quickly here, if we want to. Or we can just gain life buffer.
This is going to turn around fast.
That's 6 already. Kenrith can make it 11, and then this is getting out of control. Now, having said all of that, Inglis cannot close out the game on this turn, thanks to the life from the Uro, and it's just hard to couple 19 damage together, which means these 2 attacks from Nicholas could easily be enough to close this out.
That's hard to say. So Inglis does have 30 total mana available. Just think about that. That is some 150 odd life or something like that, right? Not literally, of course, but we're talking about gaining upwards of 40 life a turn off of Kenrith, and that's if Inglis only sinks it into life gain.
Is there any there's not even a limiting factor on white sources. He has so many that the world is his oyster.
Exactly. There's a couple Hallowed Fountains, a Temple Garden, and a Plains. That's 12 white a turn at the if Inglis needs it.
So the Return of the King. And now this is 5. And again, Growth Spiral effectively for free, paying for itself. So that's going to be 12 lands in play, 3 more that are untapped currently. So that's 27 mana for Inglis to use as he sees fit.
And if you're in Nicholas's spot, you just got to feel so bad where you don't want your opponent to draw lands, don't want them to draw spells. What do you actually hope for them to top deck at this point?
So we start with 2 Sailor activations. We draw another Sailor, which that could be a useful charm blocker, attacker, every which way here. We draw a third card. There's a Shark Typhoon. So again, another blocker, attacker, draw a card, split card.
It just does whatever it wants. It just shows up and figures it out at some point.
Slices, it dices, it bites, it gnaws.
It can even be a breakfast cereal.
And I think Nicholas is going to need to find something juicy off this Uro. Otherwise, I think the door is closing rapidly.
How do you feel about Teferi Time Raveler? Was that good enough a minute ago?
Maybe a minute ago.
Okay, hold on. There are 5 cards now in Nicholas's hand.
Yeah, you're right. Hold on. So we can make a third blocker, but there are 6 features coming in. So I think we just about make it out of this turn.
One of the scary things is Kenrith dying.
Although Kenrith can put a counter on itself. So as long as it's not blocking a 3/3 land, which would then become bigger, then I think Kenrith survives, which means Inglis survives and gets to turn the corner.
So here, Inglis would theoretically just need to do what with the Shark Typhoon when blocking with it to make that happen?
Let's see. So assuming he makes the minimum possible size shark, he makes a 1/1. Let's say that jumps in front of the 3/3, and then Kenrith goes in front of one of the 1/2/2/2s, and then 6, 8, 10, 12.
Oh, no shark though.
20. Well, let's see here. So that's 1, 4, 7, 11 mana for David Inglis. That's 3 Kenrith activations in terms of gaining life. That brings him to 26. So by itself, that's enough to survive 5 unblocked attackers, assuming the land is blocked.
God, these players just taking their time on all of this. There are hundreds of dollars on the line here, and Nicholas's back is against the wall.
Although, maybe Inglis's back is too. He is up a game, but if you find a way to throw this one away, if something slips through your fingers, then that, you kick yourself over that for a long time.
Oh, you're going to be thinking about it for months.
And this is a game where you're not just looking at a kind of basic math optimization problem. There's also a big picture strategic question of, okay, am I meant to be applying damage as aggressively as possible? Am I meant to be drawing cards so that if Nicholas has X, Y, and Z, then I'm insulated against that? Am I meant to be just giving myself as much of a life buffer and almost playing the control deck? Lots of ways that Inglis can handle this. I think he has the tools to win this game, but he does need to use those properly.
And you got to feel like that mystical dispute on it this late of a Teferi Time Raveler is a huge win for Inglis there.
And wait, hold on. Do we have?
I think he missed a counter, but it might not matter.
Well, this is 6, 10, 12. I guess he would need to give trample, but I think we would be slightly short. But no, we can make a gigantic shark and give that haste and attack, potentially.
Right.
So what does that do here? Let's see.
Crunch.
So this is a lot of mana. And yeah, I think this is going to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. That's a 9-9 shark. That's 9, 13, 15. Kenrith tramples over. Is this exactly lethal?
Oh my god. What an absolute master.
I really hope this is exactly lethal. Or I hope it's 1 point short. Either way, I'd be happy with this outcome. But this is in very impressive stuff from Inglis. If this is, 9, 13, 15. I guess he overshoots by 1. Fair enough. But still, this is very well executed here from Inglis.
Absolutely unbelievable play from David Inglis, moving on to the semi-finals of this SCG Tour on